Ah, oh, I just love these slides. Thank you. Celebrate our interdependence. That's what I'm talking about. The reminder. Ah. So on this 4th of July holiday, and I'm thinking about the month and July and freedom, and how can I make that work for our talks? Declaration of Independence. Oh, how about the Declaration of Interdependence? No, I don't want that. Let's celebrate our interdependence, right? And then we've got some others throughout the month that are going to flow with that same thing. So we're going all Washington, D.C. this month. But we're not going to be as dysfunctional. Although, how about the Supreme Court? Who were those people? Whoa! They actually did business, you know? I mean, whether you agree or disagree, they actually voted on stuff and they made it happen. Interesting. So I'm thinking about this thing about the holidays, 4th of July, Interdependence, Declaration of Independence, and the colonies and interdependence. And you know, in order for us to separate from Great Britain, we had to accept the interdependent relationship between all the colonies and work together to make that happen. And it worked pretty well for us. The Brits might want to think about that as they've now begin to, right, you know, with the Britsic or whatever they call it, the Brit regret now. Yeah, and their regret. Going it alone, I don't know if that's going to work for them, but we'll see. So this idea of interdependence, it's really, the talk is about, we're talking about oneness, we're talking about connectedness, we're talking about what I love, the way Thich Nhat Hanh describes it as interbeingness, you know. They were all related in these various ways, and we're here to help and support each other and to live in a communal situation, and we're here in relationship. And it's pretty hard to define yourself without relationship. If you can, help me out. I'd like to figure it out, because when I think about it, I'm like, you know, I'm a son. Okay, that's relationship to my dad, or, you know, I'm a pastor here, so that's in relationship to you. It's always, what am I in relationship with as I look at defining myself? Even when I decide to define myself as what I truly am at my core, which is divine emanation of spirit, I'm in relationship with God. It's all about being in this relationship. It's all about the interconnectedness. It's the way my Aunt Ruth's puppies used to work. Trixie and Buster, you know, they were around forever when we were growing up. These little, maybe that's where I got the thing about little dogs. Anyway, because I like dogs up here, you know, and I've grown to like the little ones, but if you have to bend down to pet a dog, I'm thinking it's a cat. I wanted, you know, I want the dog to be like, hey, pup, how you doing? But anyway, back to Trixie and Buster. These guys were just amazing animals, and Aunt Ruth would go, sing, Trixie, and she'd go, woo, 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 you know, and it was really like entertaining. And then there was this moment in time where Buster lost his eyesight, and Trixie became his guide dog, and she would lead him all over everywhere, and it just and they knew they had this like radar. They could run along, they'd run through the house side by side, and when she'd take a turn, because he was like right at her hip, you know, boom, he'd go, and it was just this interconnected relationship that worked for them. That's really what we're about. We're about guiding each other through life and helping each other through life. And thank God we have some of those guides. I mean, whoa, where would I be without Johanna? I'd like forget my phone. Oh, that was laying today. But you know, or my iPad, which is magnetic. That's interesting. New toy, I know. Let's go to a quote. This is a good time for a quote. What is Christian Larson reading Pathway of Roses? Have you read Pathway of Roses? Check it out. We should order some. I mentioned a book. Let's get it. Pathway of Roses, Christian Larson. It's really wonderful. And here's one of his quotes. The great goal is the spiritual life. I think so. I think that's why we come here. We're understanding. We're after that great goal, right? And in the spiritual life, all the joys of sense, all the joys of intellect, and all the joys of the highest heaven are divinely blended into one. Wow. If we can get our connection right with God, if we can get our connection right with Spirit, we go into that high realm, that high rarefied air of heaven, and we get all the joys of life. It's a very simple thing on paper, but what a process is involved, because we tend to think of ourselves, particularly here as we're celebrating July 4th, the rugged individualist, you know. That was Teddy Roosevelt brought that to us, the rugged individualist, you know, and we saw ourselves as that. And we work so hard at being these proud individuals, but really we're individualized expressions of the only thing that is. We're part of something that we cannot separate from. We live in this thing called life, and if we can live in that thing called life from a divinely spiritual space, following Christian Larson, we will end up with the joy, with the intellect, with the sense, with the consciousness, which is we're talking about highest heaven, the consciousness that allows us to be connected with all that is. And this is how this interconnectedness works. See, the universe is always dancing and at play with itself. The Buddhists have a lovely concept where they talk about emptiness and form. If you look around the room here, there's a lot of space in this room. And we came into the space. See, we as form penetrate the space. And the form completely engulfs us. And we're interconnected in that way. We could never separate ourselves from space, no more than space could ever separate itself from form. That's just how it is. Form is constantly saying, here I am. And space is saying, welcome, I have you. I'm holding you. Sound interesting? Sound familiar? It's like God. Here I am. And God is saying, welcome, Kill the fatted calf, put on this seamless garment, let's sit down to eat. And where's your brother? Call him in from the field so he can sit down and eat with us. It's all of that. It's about forgiveness. It's about love. It's about sharing. It's about this process of interconnectedness. Form penetrating space, and space engulfing and swallowing up form, living in this oneness. And we get to decide it. We get to decide how we're going to be in that relationship. The two monks were sitting out watching the prayer flags blow. And the one monk said, oh, the flags are blowing. And the other monk said, no, the winds are moving. And then they went to the guru and they said, because they got into an argument, is it the flags blowing or is it the wind moving? Are the flags waving or is it the wind moving? And the guru says, consciousness is moving. Consciousness is moving. When we decide something, we're the ones that are making a movement. That's what Dr. Holmes is so busy talking about, thoughts or things. Our thoughts become the things that move in our lives and become the experiences of our lives. How are we going to live our lives? Are we going to be in a place where we're arguing over whether it's the wind or the flag, or are we going to decide to live our life in this space of blended oneness with the divine and make the choices for ourselves that are going to bring us more joy and more fulfillment and more sense to our life? Dr. Holmes says, what is it we need for greater freedom? Nothing but a greater realization of what we already know. What we already know, but have forgotten. So I want to invite you during this month of 4th of July celebration of freedom to remember the freedom that we have, the liberty that we have to make choices in our lives that allow us to live a more fulfilling life, and that it is our responsibility and our joy and our get to that we have this opportunity to make these choices for ourselves. And when we remember what we really are, when we can stop and go into that space of understanding that we are part of something that is so grand and so magnificent that the creation couldn't just stop with us, and it kept going and going and going. But when we get down to the very center of it, we're filled with all this potential, we're filled with all this possibility, and we're sometimes, I don't know about you, but I sometimes get so stuck up in my limitations. And I like limitations. There are certain things I like, about limitations, because without some of these limitations, my life could get a little bit crazy. So I like to have some limits on my life, but I don't want to live my life in a limited way. I like the definitions, I like the distinctions, the forms, but the forms are constantly changing, right? But what I really want to get to is that space of understanding and allowing that there's space for me to expand and to grow and to constantly get bigger, to not be satisfied with the status quo. And if something's not working for me, to know that I have the ability to change it. If something's not working for you, get right with who and what you really are, a divine emanation of spirit. Live in that space of possibilities and think about, how do I make this change? I choose a different intention. I choose a different feeling. I'm going to be connected to something else. And since this form in this space is always moving and making new definitions and new discernments, why not guide that process with your intention? Why not guide that process with your feelings, with what you really know? And it happens for you as you acknowledge your oneness with the divine, as you accept the truth of who and what you really are. That is the key to finding out how this interconnectedness works and how it can show up in your life. We're going to take a road trip a little later, and we'll be passing by some of the sequoias, and I just love the sequoias. And I found out something interesting about the sequoias recently. Their root structure is only about 12 feet deep. Sequoias don't have a taproot, but their roots cover like an acre, and there's like, what is it? They displace like something like 90,000 cubic feet of dirt, and they're growing, and they grow in groves with these 12-foot deep roots, right? So you can just imagine what's happening. They're all growing together. Their roots are growing together. What makes them stand tall for 2,500 years, what makes them the tallest trees and the biggest organisms on the planet, is that they're able to connect together and hold each other up through this process of interconnectedness. What an interesting idea. That's how this shows up. It shows up as coincidence. Like when I mentioned earlier this week that I was going to do the celebration of Interdependence to Paulette, who posts them on the website, she goes, "Oh, you should watch my talk last year that I did on celebration of Interdependence." Or no, what do you call it? It wasn't, what was yours?
I think it was the celebration of interdependence.
Celebration of Interdependence? Something like that. I was like, whoa, how about that? How about that for Coinky Dink? You know, I didn't know that that's what she did, and now we're doing it. And it turns out that it was the same weekend. It was the weekend before the 4th of July that she did that talk. So it was actually a year ago now. How about that, right? Coincidence. Coincidence. Coincidence is how we see our interdependence showing up. Coincidence is one of the ways that we experience it in our lives. Going to the phone, thinking about calling somebody, and picking up the phone and the person's already there. Those kinds of coincidences are part of the interdependence that we experience in our lives on a regular basis. I had a friend, some years ago, I was riding my scooter back in Austin, Texas, and actually it wasn't my scooter. I was visiting someone else, and I was riding their scooter, and I wrecked it on Mansfield Dam. Crashed on the dam. I still have the scar in my hand right here from all the gravel that went into my hand. I was hurt pretty bad. Yeah, it was dam. It was, oh damn. Thanks for that. My writer, Jerry. and traffic stopped, and someone picked me up, and they drove me down to this clinic that was closed. But there was a dentist's office in the same clinic, a dentist named Charlie Snow. And I went, Charlie Snow? I know him. And sure enough, when I was living in Austin, because I was back visiting, I had interviewed him a couple of times. So he knew me, and he fixed me up, and I got back on my way, and Good Samaritan went back with me in their pickup truck, picked up the bike, and drove me 35 miles back into Austin to my friend's house. I said, wow, that's so sweet. So we fast forward a couple of years, and my best friend I've known since I was in high school, it's the only friend I've got from that far back. He's like my oldest friend because we moved so much, but that's a different story. I'll share that another time. But Barry was on a plane from Chicago to Los Angeles, and they're talking on the plane, and the lady says, "So you live in L.A.?" He says, "Yeah, I live in L.A." She says, "Oh yeah, well, I live in Texas." "Oh, really? Yeah, where? Austin?" "Yeah, I live in Austin." "Oh, that's great. Hey, I got a friend that's from Austin, but he now lives in Los Angeles." She says, "I know a guy from Austin who now lives in Los Angeles." I said, "Really?" "Yeah, I picked him up one day off of the dam, a Mansfield Dam, and I took him to the clinic where he got his hand fixed after a motorcycle accident." Barry finishes the sentence. And she goes, "Yeah, it was," and they say simultaneously, "Steve Rambo." How about that, right? Coincidence, this interconnectedness. We are connected. Even our strangers and our friends are connected. Talk about, that was like 2 degrees of separation on that one. It wasn't even 6, This is how it shows up in our lives. Like I said, with Paulette doing a similar talk a year ago and me not knowing anything about it. And it's also how we support each other. Like the geese flying in the V formation. Well, actually, this V formation. You know why that is, right? Because they're leading each other. They're drafting off of each other. And every now and then, the front guy goes into the back because he gets tired of leading, and so they get more lift, and they save a lot of time and a lot of energy by flying in that way. lesson for us. Our interconnectedness allows us to do things we couldn't do on our own, to save energy, to be more efficient in the process. I like that. I like what this interconnectedness does for us. I like that it provides us support and it protects us. It enhances our lives. Dr. Holmes says, oh, thank you. Do I need to go back? How did that work? Oh, that's part of how it shows up. Right. The core of my being is also the core of your being and the core of all beings. This is another good book, Spontaneous Fulfillment of Desire. We might do a book study on that one. But this idea of the core of my being is also the core of your being and the core of all beings. It's really the core of, to use that word again, of our interconnectedness. It's the center of this whole concept for me, is that we are all interconnected. We're all part of the same thing. And that core is actually the divine spirit. So take me now to Dr. Holmes. As fire warms the body, as food strengthens us, as sunshine raises our spirits, so there is a subtle transfusion of some invisible force in our communion with the infinite. A subtle transfusion. This conscious commingling of our thought with spirit is essential to the well-being of every part of us. I love this idea of our conscious communion with the infinite. And as we commune with, as we become one with, as we commingle with this divine presence of which we really are, and we consciously recognize that about ourselves, we reach into a place where our well-being is enhanced. A good friend, I was at FLI, the Faith Leadership Institute at USC this week for a round table. And some of the people at the table were asking me about my journey from being a weatherman to doing this job. And I said, from talking about the acts of God to talking just directly about God. And in the process of having that conversation, they said, so why did you leave CBS? And I said, well, the CBS sort of left me. And he said, what do you mean? Well, they decided they wanted somebody else, so I didn't have a job anymore. And then that led to a crisis of faith and understanding and identity. And then from that, I kind of found this teaching that really taught me that there was something bigger than your job that you're a part of, and that is this divine spirit, that is this core of my being that is interconnected with everything. And suddenly my life started to unfold in these fantastic and wonderful ways to the point where I get to here, and I must tell you, I am happier, and I feel more joy, I feel more authentic, I feel more at peace in this role, and the role that I had before totally prepared me for that. I mean, the weathercaster is the only one on the set that doesn't have a script. He just reads a map. So I read really good maps, and I'm able to talk without a script, and I'm prepared to stand in front of you and speak. And I had a whole bunch of, because one of Dr. Holmes' most favorite things to make metaphors about and parables about? Nature. What happens in nature? What does the weatherman talk about? Nature. What happens in nature? I was preset for this. It's like, wow, right? And so I'm sharing all of that stuff, and then in walks this guy, James Nash. He was my director at CBS. Now, here's where this whole story goes to. We're talking about the spirit that's essential to our well-being. This guy is a man of faith. He's a strong man of faith. And a year and a half ago, he had run a marathon, and then he was at work 2 days later. Now, months before that, it was a holiday weekend was coming up. They had invited the fire department and the police department and EMS to do the morning news, to be interviewed on the morning news. And so they were there on the morning, 2 days after James had run a marathon. They were there on the morning that he hit the button on the switcher, and some button in his body went kaplooey, a fuse blew, and he dropped dead right there on the set. Right there on the director's desk. And the assistant director, knowing what to do, completely turned him over, began CPR on him right away, while the audio person ran downstairs to who? The EMS that was in the studio. And they came up with the paddles, boom, and James is alive to tell the story today. Interconnectedness, folks. this commingling of our spirits, this understanding that everything's in the right place if we can just get right with our relationship with the divine. If we don't think that we're individual and we're out here doing it all on our own. We're not doing it all on our own. And if you think you're doing it all on your own, you've made a mistake. I never made this shirt, but boy, do I love them, I didn't even buy these socks, but they work out great for today. Interconnectedness. Couldn't work without it. None of you could. None of us cook our own food anymore. Maybe you cook a vegetable or two. We certainly don't. I don't think any of us make cars. What could we do by ourselves and still survive? Breathe. That's about it. We need this. We need each other. We need each other. So let's recognize that and quit trying to be a one-man band. So how do we use this process of interconnectedness? I think I just said it. Cooperation. Time for some Bible thumping. 1 Corinthians. But it's like, I cut it all up because that's what people do with the Bible anyway. They take what they want and they throw the rest away. So I figure, why not? It's good enough for the Christians. It's good enough for this version of Christianity. We are a version of Christianity, by the way. Here we go. As it is, there are many parts, but one body. What body are they talking about? The body that is life itself. That its parts should have equal concern for each other. Now, this is really powerful. How often do we really hold that idea in our minds, that we have equal concern for each other? We're so busy trying to win, get ahead. The other guy's getting the back. You put your blinker on driving down the freeway. It's almost like telling the guy next to you, speed up. There's a space, there's a gap, and he wants to get over. So we drive around without blinkers. We have no equal concern for each other. Anyway, back to this. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. When I go off on a tangent, you got to go along with me. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. Wow, if we can do this equal concern, then we have a good chance of honoring every other part, and then we all get to rejoice. Don't live in fear, forget everything and run. Live in fear, face everything and rejoice. Got that? Face everything and rejoice. When you're in a fear space, don't be afraid. Just know that you're part of a bigger action in life and honor whatever it is that's going on. Make one with it, love it, and it will become an easier thing to work with, and you will have this rejoiceful energy in your life. This brings me to Paulette again. I loved your quote. I think it's worth coming back. Desmond Tutu, here we go. The God who existed before any religion counts on you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, to make the oneness of the human family known and celebrated. He gives us our task. He gives us our journey. He gives us our set for this month. Can you do that? Can you accept that? To take on the role of the God who existed before any religion. Can you take on the responsibility? In other words, can you be response-able? Can you respond to this opportunity to celebrate and make known the beauty of the human family? Can we work in cooperation? Can we celebrate our interconnectedness into a way in which we can have an experience of life not unlike what Dr. Holmes had when he went to Whittier to do the opening of that church back in 1956. Are you familiar with what happened to him? That's what's called the cosmic consciousness experience. He was on stage, he was speaking, and something happened, and a bright light flew before him, and he was just like off in another place. I think I have the text of it. Let's see if I can make this happen. Yeah, here it is. He was just speaking away. He's opening up this new church. He's christening the church. He's welcoming everybody, and he's beginning to wrap up. He's beginning to wrap up about the oneness and the mission of religious science, and he says, we are no more anything other than this one thing. I don't want to mess this up. Hold on. Eye extenders. There we go. We are not more anything other than this one thing. We have co-joined our consciousness with the eternal verity of the universe, that everlasting and eternal Father of all and the Mother of all creation. I see you doing this. I see you uniting in one great hymn of praise, one great union of effort, one crescendo of song, one enveloping light of consciousness. And he took a pause. And he looked out and he says, I see it. I see it. And he says, oh God, the veil is thin between. We do mingle with the host of heaven. I see it. Then he sat down, he says, I shall speak no more. Wow. Wow. That's the guy that gives us the teaching that we follow. He had the experience of it. And we can have that experience. We can co-mingle, we can co-join and see the heavenly host and actually see our journey, see our mission and feel such power at it that when we wake up in the morning, we're excited. We're excited to go out. I'm going to make this day and I'm going to do something incredible with this day because I am interconnected with everything that's happening. Space is completely enveloping me and I'm penetrating my good right now. Can you do that? Do you feel free to do that? Really? Do you feel free to do that? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's my family. There you go. There you go. Let's do some prayer stuff. Oh, that's some new things. Okay, that's it. How about the affirmation? I got so excited because I want to do something about the prayer. Here we go. Let's do it. Let's do it. Are you ready? I am awake to my unity with the whole. Embracing this awareness, all beings are blessed. Get out there and bless them. All right. Prayer is a powerful tool. I want us to get to a place where it's something that we use so well that it's like a hammer with that really nicely honed handle, you know, where you work it. This, thank you, Reverend Maggie, is our prayer box. How many of you have seen this? How many of you know where this is? Who let her in here? It's usually out on the table where the practitioner pictures are. Every service now, before the healing prayer, the lead practitioner is going to bring this out here. We're going to set it here. This has your prayer request in it. During the week, our practitioners pray over your prayer request. On Sunday morning, during the meditation, the practitioners sit in that room and they pray over your prayer request. We know the truth of you that you apparently aren't knowing at that particular moment. Some part of you has forgotten, but we never forget. And I want you to take advantage of this and to use this. I want to lift up the consciousness of this community to such a high vibration that people look at you and they go, wow, you're such a bright light. I love it when you come into the room. Why are they going to do that? Because you're going to be so prayed up. Because your truth is going to be so present to your life that you're going to be like, wow, like I was saying a minute ago, and waking up every morning ready to jump out into the world and do great things, even if it's just helping somebody across the street or handing somebody you're down here at the store and the person wants the green beans and they're up there and you go, oh, here they are. And just something as simple as that can change a person's life. And it begins with getting your head straight. And head straightness happens through prayer in Science of Mind teaching. All right? So let's pray. Thank you, Dr. Holmes. Through your readings this week, I was able to see the truth of who I really am. And I know that I am one with the Almighty, with the heavenly host on high. The truth of my being is I am part of a great experience of life connected with every other experience of life. And what I know is true for me is true for each and every person that is hearing my voice right now. Each and every person who is now feeling the vibration of this prayer moving through the atmosphere in time and space. And so as I speak this truth, I know that this word does not return unto me void, because there is a law of the universe that is ready to receive, ready to hold, that is saying, welcome, I've got you, and I make it good. So I speak a word of truth and wholeness for each and every person here. I know that there is no dis-ease affecting the body that the mind cannot overcome. Through the interconnectedness of the human family, where the individualized power of the one is not enough, the collective power of the many is, and that's where we get our wholeness and our healing from. It's that same energy of connected consciousness that brings about peace to the world, that will feed the planet, that will cool the planet, that will use our resources in smart and wonderful ways, that brings prosperity and abundance to the lives of each and every person. This is the mission that we are on. This is the consciousness that we hold. This is the truth that we declare, and we accept this truth now. So what I declare for each and every person is right action, divine guidance, perfect unfoldment, equanimity and harmony and joy in life. For this and for so much more, I say thank you, Mother, Father, God. Thank you, Divine Presence. Thank you, Infinite Spirit, for your love and your grace and your givingness. So I now release this prayer into a perfect law that is already seen and heard, and now goes about the business of making it manifest in the lives of each and every one of us, making it so, affirming it now by saying, and so it is. Alrighty now. Sweet.